On April 6, 1967, Douglas Hegdel was 20 years old. He had no battle experience. He was a petty officer of United States Navy from South Dakota. But one stupid mistake thrust him into the midst of conflict. The young man did not realize he was making history, but he did. On that day, Hegdel was responsible for keeping the morning watch. He was on board the USS Canberra, navigating the coast of northern Vietnam at the time. It was a powerful cruiser of the Boston class, armed with guided missiles and 28 guns in total. It was against the rules for anybody to be on deck when the cannons were fired. However, Hegdel must have been absent for the safety exercise. At 3:30 in the morning, he got up and walked outside to get some oxygen. He was thrown overboard by a gun mount with a 5-inch barrel burst. Nobody saw Mr. Hegdel enter the South China Sea or leave. Even after 2 days, his team did not disclose that he was gone. No quick search was organized for him. Hegdel was in the water for several hours. A fisherman from Cambodia found him in the end and brought him to safety. They did a decent job of taking care of him, but things were about to take a sharp turn for the worst. The Vietnamese fisherman delivered the American prisoner to the hands of the Vietnamese fighters. He received many severe beatings before being sent to the infamous Hanoi Hilton jail. Hegdel was devoid of any knowledge that could be considered valuable. On the other hand, the Vietnamese were not willing to trust his claim about falling overboard. They were very confident that Hegdel was a member of the American commando team. Therefore, he made the decision to deceive them by acting as if he lacked intelligence. In reality, Doug Hegdel's father was a prosperous businessman in his own right. But Doug put on the act of being the son of a poor farmer. He portrayed himself as a simple rural bumpkin unwillingly drafted into the army. His appearance aided in his ability to convince them that he was no threat to them. When asked to write statements against the United States, he agreed but pretended to be unable to read or write, which was believable to his Vietnamese captors. They assigned someone to teach Hegdel to read. After Hegdel appeared incapable of learning to read and write, his captors gave up on him. He was given nearly free rein of the camp. They referred to him as the incredibly stupid one. Hegdel was assigned the responsibility of keeping the passageway of the jail clean. Doug took advantage of his somewhat unrestricted freedom to engage in destructive behavior. He proceeded to the garage of the correctional facility, opened the gas caps of the vehicles, and poured sand into them. He removed 5 of the trucks from active duty. Joseph Kreka, an officer in the Air Force, was Hegdel's cellmate. Mnemonic devices were taught to Hegdel by Kreka so that he could learn all 256 inmate names. He memorized everyone's names, dates of capture, methods of arrest and other personal details, to the tune of "Old MacDonald Had a Farm." When the Vietnamese decided to release 3 prisoners from the camp, Douglas didn't want to go. The POWs had made a "no-go-home-early" pact, in which they agreed that they would all go home together or not at all. But Douglas was ordered by his commanding officer to return home to share the valuable information he had acquired, and was thus released with 2 other POWs on August 5, 1969. In 1970, Doug Hegdel was delegated to represent the United States in the peace negotiations in Paris. He addressed the North Vietnamese with his first-hand knowledge of the maltreatment of POWs, and presented them with the evidence. In subsequent years, he worked as a survival teacher for the United States Navy. He left the U.S. Navy as a petty officer 2nd class.